Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. A great deal of modern commentary on declining fertility rates focuses on things like economics, breakdown in family, housing costs, education. Typically, things are too expensive is where everything lands. And the narrative is that childcare places immense pressure on family budgets, or inflation is eroding confidence in having children. Now, these concerns, sure, they have some explanatory value. But really, what we're seeing here is a deeper cultural transformation that has altered the very way in which we think about children. I personally, and I don't care how many people dislike what I'm about to say, but it's true, I personally detest the language that children are expensive. It's a horrible way to think about a child because the child itself is not a commodity. The child is a gift. Sure, particular lifestyle choices can be expensive, but anywhere from growing in virtue to making the willing sacrifices to even change the way we live for the sake of welcoming these lives into our family, into our marriage. That's crucial. The problem is we are increasingly living vicariously through particular standards of living set by, particularly I want to focus on here, screens, rather than through virtuous Catholic relationships. A recent study from the National Bureau of Economic Research argues that the introduction of the iPhone in 2007 might explain between one-third and one-half of the fertility decline amongst younger American women during the years immediately following its release. Now, scholars are debating this. They're debating how to properly adopt that methodology, but the study nevertheless identifies a factor that many social scientists have been commenting on for years and suspected. Technology has fundamentally altered the nature of human interaction and relationships. And because of that, after at least one generation onwards, it has therefore altered marriage and childbearing. That observation surprises nobody. Fertility is the fruit of fruitful relationships. Relationships require human communion, encounters, presence, attention, hard work, frankly, investment in the relationship, intentionality. Smartphones systematically fragment all of those natural, virtuous, laborious things that are needed for the sake of a relationship to thrive. And therefore, one can safely argue that smartphones affect fertility. The issue, however, is far beyond birth rates. Fertility is the final indicator of this larger social issue. Before we can talk about fewer babies, we can also talk about the fact that there are fewer relationships, fewer dates, fewer conversations, fewer friendships, fewer opportunities for friendships. And effectively, what the digital world and what the screen world now has created is a style of life that increasingly isolates individuals while remaining perpetually digitally connected to others through our devices. The late sociologist Robert Putnam, in that book, Bowling Alone, this was one of Al's favorite books. I greatly encourage us reading it at least once, documents the collapse of civic participation throughout American life. He observed that social capital was steadily eroding across communities. The smartphone has accelerated that process. It was already underway, especially in the era of the television, and so the screen world, that environment began. But that isolation continued to develop and got exacerbated in the digital world. The irony is difficult to miss. Humanity now possesses more communication tools than ever any civilization in history, ever before. But simultaneously, every survey about loneliness is showing rising and therefore record levels of loneliness unparalleled in human history. Former U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy noted, loneliness has become a significant public health concern whose effects rival those of smoking and other major health risks. So in other words, society has been steadily losing human interaction while gaining constant communication. This would be the stuff of comedy if it wasn't so tragic. Human beings are embodied creatures. Aristotle describes man as a political animal. Our flourishing occurs within communities. Christianity deepens that insight. Human persons are created for communion. We reflect the image of a triune God. Every technology that weakens embodied relationships damages something essential within human nature. And to that end, I want to speak to this reality. No matter how much one would argue for this, AI will never replace the human person. Even if you have androids that can become perfect simulacras of the human person, they cannot. Because this kind of communion can only happen from soul to soul as bearers of the divine image and likeness. And that's why it's particularly evident in the world of dating today. Previous generations did the hard work of encountering potential spouses through churches, neighborhoods, workplaces, schools, family gatherings, social organizations. Today, though, young adults are encountering each other through dating apps designed through the logic of consumer choice, preferences. I'm not knocking individuals who have found their spouses by means of dating apps. The problem is many individuals now are inadvertently approaching relationships with the mindset of preferential shopping. It's a psychological reality, examining an inventory rather than connecting with the person and discerning a vocation from the get-go. Psychologist Barry Schwartz famously described how excessive choice frequently produces a kind of paralysis. It's called the paradox of choice. He argues that more options often create greater anxiety and diminished commitment. And dating apps place thousands of alternatives within immediate reach and thereby encourage perpetual analysis and evaluation, and therefore it kills the need for decisive and frankly urgent commitment. Smartphones continuously provide alternatives to human interactions. Loneliness once compelled individuals towards building friendships. Screens today, unfortunately, anesthetize any of those experiences. Today, entertainment arrives instantly. What pick your poison is really what it is. Validation, gaming, artificial intelligence, distraction, almost perpetual entertainment. Human relationships cannot compete because relationships with another human person are hard work. They are inconvenient and they require effort. They are the only fruitful thing in this scenario, but they take a lot of work. Neil Postman warned us in Amusing Ourselves to Death that the media does more than transmit information. It actually alters how societies think. Smartphones teach people to expect speed and efficiency, convenience, immediate gratification. Marriage, relationships, requires patience. Parenthood requires tremendous sacrifice. Anyone with a child will willingly tell you they cannot afford to be selfish. It's the very nature of parenting and marriage as well. Family life requires endurance and continued commitment. Those virtues aren't given the avenue to develop because of these environments that are dominated by instant satisfaction. Pornography use, unfortunately, exacerbates that problem, but that's a large topic for another time. The point I want to stress in all of this is that we're seeing a fertility decline, and there is a reality in which we have facilitated a digital avenue that has exacerbated that entire problem and unfortunately created a complete spiral toward loneliness. So yes, this issue may involve economics, housing, cultural uncertainty, what have you, but there's a simpler truth here. We've become a society that struggles to encounter human persons. And if we become that, we will struggle to marry, period. A society that struggles to marry will struggle to have children, or will refuse to welcome children, even if they do get married. The path forward has to be where we started from the get-go. Christian civilization begins with human persons knowing, loving, and encountering Jesus Christ, and by virtue of that, within the covenant family community, encountering each other. Building communities of prayer, families who pray together, and other families who pray alongside other families, friendships rooted in virtue, husbands and brides turning to one another again and again rather than toward their devices. And it begins with turning always in the beginning and in the end to Jesus Christ in the Eucharist. That's what authentic human communion truly means, and I sincerely believe that alone is going to restore these necessary fibers of the covenant bond that will bring about the avenues for the flourishing of the human race and therefore the remedy of the fertility decline. Stay tuned, I'm Marcus Peter.